right, welcome everyone. Happy Tuesday. Good to see all of your faces this evening. Thank you for all of the guests that are here tonight. I'm so excited you have decided to join us, or maybe you're watching the replay. This is our second in the series of 4, where we are focusing on not only March Madness and all the amazing things that are happening right now, but we are focusing on women, doctors, and practitioners in the holistic health field. And I have a fantastic practitioner that I'm going to introduce to you all just here in a minute. If you don't have your screen set to speaker view in the upper right-hand corner, please go ahead and change that to speaker view so you'll see myself and Jill this evening and be able to pay close attention to what's going on up here in the information that's being shared. So before we get started, my name is Dr. Staci Holweger, and I am not a medical doctor. I am not your doctor, but I do have a PhD in integrative medicine and a PhD in functional medicine. So I love to focus on the holistic side of healing modalities and tools to fill my toolbox. And Lifewave is a technology that I have been utilizing in my practice and with doctors and practitioners around the globe, everyday people, for the last almost 3 years now. So I do want to share with you before we get started that if you are new to Lifewave, or maybe you're a veteran or a guest, that the information that we're sharing tonight is not intended to treat or cure any disease. It's not intended to prevent anything. If you're pregnant or nursing, please check with your healthcare practitioner. And if you are on medications, if you have any health concerns, you're going to reference your practitioner or doctor that sees you, not myself or not Jill this evening. But a little bit later on, we will be taking questions. And I want you to keep in mind that those questions you're going to be putting in the chat, please make sure that you're sharing your symptoms that you are experiencing so we can address those symptoms with the patches that would work best for you in your situation. Again, we won't be talking about any diseases or any syndromes or anything like that at all, okay? So with that, I am so excited to introduce to you Jill Garrett. Now, Jill is a certified holistic consultant and practitioner, and she's also an expert level advanced wellness coach. She has been credited in Western medicine, okay? So Western medicine for 28 years with an accredited certification as a nurse holistic practitioner with an emphasis on alternative therapies, as an expert level wellness coach, consultant, holistic nutritionist, and has a holistic approach in her practice since 2010. She's the owner of a busy health and wellness practice. It's called Whole for Life, with locations, 2 different locations in South Carolina. Walla, I believe how you say that, Walla, South Carolina. You have to correct me on that, Jill, and Anderson, South Carolina. And she's the owner of Whole for Life Apothecary, which is filled with her own private label blended professional grade patented supplements. And Jill is also a senior director with Lifewave. So Jill, I would love for you to come on here, and we kind of talked about this ahead of time. Take us to your background, your profession, because you have 28 years of experience on both Eastern and Western medicine. And then, of course, bring us up to speed. How were you introduced to Lifewave? How did this modality in holistic health and healing come into your sphere? What have you noticed? What have you experienced? And then I know you have some fantastic things you want to share with us, of course, about how the technology works. What is happening with your clients in your practice every day? So thank you, Jill, for being here.
Oh, thank you so much, Staci. It is my honor and privilege for sure. So obviously, I have been in Western medicine, or what we know here in the U.S. as traditional medicine. This is my 28th year. I started out very young, truly. I'd like to say I was 12, but I really was about 18 when I started my first nursing degree. And so everything was pretty much traditional medicine, but I always had questions beyond the traditional scope. I practiced traditional medicine for many years, and then I stepped away and more into a consulting role as my kids got a little bit older. I wanted to be home and be available. They played sports, all those things. And so just wanted to make sure that I was family first priority. And so my husband graciously took the burden of all of the workload, and then I was able to consult here and there. As our children aged, my oldest kind of followed the path that I had followed when I was young, which was my parents did all of the right things to the best of their ability. And I was the only one in my family, truly my immediate family, that was overweight. And so when I decided to have children, I was certain that that wasn't going to happen. We were going to do all the right things and that kind of stuff. And our oldest sort of followed the same path. And when we went into the physician's office, and again, I had a really good working relationship in our community, it was, well, you need to just give him some metformin, and because he's going to be insulin resistant and we need to put him on a calorie deficit and all that. And so it just didn't make sense to me. And I was simultaneously fighting a terrible case of shingles. I had an outbreak every 11 months for 12 months. And so there again, they wanted to do the traditional stuff and it just didn't make sense. So I started asking questions and I started down a more holistic or natural path, really full fledged at that point. So that's sort of how my career in alternative medicines and my credentialing took place. And I still I'm very thankful for Western medicine. I tell people if I cut my finger off, I'm not going to go rub dirt on it. I'm going to find a surgeon and have my finger reattached. But if you tell me literally there's anything else going on, it's probably not going to be my first stop. And so that's sort of how we practice at our clinics as well. So fast forward to friends and family. As I was starting to get these credentials, they wanted some help, and then their friends wanted help, and their friends wanted help. And so in 2000, well, actually, we're celebrating this year our 5-year anniversary being open to the public. I was sitting in church one Sunday morning, and God just dropped every bit of Whole for Life into my heart. And if you know anything about the medical board and licensing and all of that, to have that happen on Sunday and Wednesday be open for business has to be truly a miracle. I give them all the credit for that. So that's kind of how we open to the public. We see about 100 patients a week now on average. And then, of course, the passion project of the apothecary has been part of my journey for the past 6 years for sure. And we finally saw that to fruition this year. So, but I very much practice traditional medicine. I always laugh and say the amount of unlearning I had to do what we do today is unbelievable. But for the past 20 years, really, I have practiced healthy modalities and more alternative therapy, holistic approaches. But since 2010, it's been exclusive for my family and for myself, and then for friends and family, and now the public. So we do run 2 very busy clinics. We see all sorts of things, from things I never really intended. I really did truly want to be a wellness clinic, but we've just, I think, because modern medicine, there's a lot to be desired in a lot of ways. And so we see everything from an earache all the way through to those rogue, atypical, rapidly growing cells. And sometimes it's because people don't want to do the traditional approach. And sometimes it's they want to do an adjunctive approach where we're doing both things. And sometimes it's where they've just been given no hope. And so this is where we are. Which kind of enters Lifewave for us. Obviously, we've been using we have a couple of different therapies we offer in the office, that kind of stuff. We've made progress for years. But Dr. Jennifer, you had on last week. She's been a friend of mine for a long time, and just highly valued person. And she's the one that introduced me to Lifewave. I had heard about the technology quite a few years ago, and I didn't think it was available in the US. I said, then, if you ever make it to the US, sign me up, because I also don't have the greatest family history personally. So while I am healthy now, you want to do all that you can to stay that way. And so she told me about it, and I am the nerd. The science, because of that Western medicine, probably the science still has to be there for me. So I spent hours, more than I want to admit, poring over. I am the nerd that has read every one of those clinical trials. So I immediately, by the first weekend, I was ready to go with my practice. I wanted to have them available for retail. I also wanted to have the opportunity for, wholesale and things like that for our patients as well. So we just kind of dove in. I got the biggest package you could get, and we dove in and haven't looked back. And the results that I personally have seen, I was fairly healthy. So, because I had shingles so many times, I did have what I call the spongy heel. They always started on the left side of my body, and sometimes it was from the cranial nerve all the way down. Sometimes it was the sciatic all the way down. It just varied. Sometimes it was just the trunk. But I was left with some what I would consider nerve damage in my heel. And so the very first thing I noticed, because I wasn't the one that, now some of my office staff, they absolutely are the one patch wonders. But for me, I didn't really notice anything. I just believed the science. I knew it was working. And so I did it more preventatively. And one morning I woke up and I said, I don't have a spongy heel at all anymore. Now, mind you, I wasn't having any, pains or anything like that, but I thought I'm going to do a little test. So, because I knew nerves, the nervous system is the slowest healing system in the entire body. And so I thought, okay, we've made some progress, probably not totally repaired. So I can very easily just take these off for a day or two and see what happens. And it was quite obvious that the patching absolutely was taking care of my nerve issue. So that was huge for me. I think that even though I've always been a good sleeper, I think it's just deeper now. I think that, I mean, there's so many things. And I have the wrong shirt on today because it's cold here, but I had a shingle scar that had been with me. It was the only one that had been with me since 2010. And so I did my own little experiment with aloe vera. And I should have shared with you the before and afters are unbelievable in 4 days. So so that's sort of my story. My kids, even though they're adult kids now, if mom says it's good for you, they do it. So they are. Their performance has improved. My youngest was an elite travel ball player. He had an ankle injury. We patched him in 2 days. He was totally fine again. My husband, I always say he's my best and worst advertisement all wrapped into one. Husbands sometimes go rogue and eat what they want to eat and do what they want to do. But he doesn't miss his patches. He wears them every day because he sees the difference. And a lot of the natural things he does because I tell him he needs to do them. And he just trusts that. But he can't tell you that even our supplements that we created, he can't tell you they're really doing something for him. These patches, he can definitely tell. No afternoon slump, good energy. He's dropped 6 pant sizes. I mean, it's pretty.
6?
Yes. Yeah. So, and he's cleaned up his diet some. We certainly can't attribute it to diet. So definitely that X49 has made a huge difference for him. Yeah. Yeah. So, and then, I can spend the whole rest of the hour talking to you about the things we've seen in the clinic. So
okay, before you do, tell me, everybody wants to know when did you start using the patches? So how long ago? What patches are you using? And then kind of what was that time frame that you noticed those changes with your spongy heel and the sleep and that stuff?
So, and I am, the patches themselves, I started using, I am a biomarker girl. So I have my biological age tested every year, and I really should have led with that, but I didn't. So I had just had my biomarkers checked before I started this at age 44.
Okay.
I was approximately 39, biologically speaking. So chronologically 44, biologically 39, which, for those that don't know, that means your organs, your skin, your hair, your eyes, your heart, your lungs, all of that are functioning at about age 39. Yeah. So I should have patched for about 5 months, but it was time for me to have biomarkers again. So I patched for 4 months. 4 months is when I really started noticing the big changes but there again, I was paying attention at that point. The spongy heel was probably at about the 90-day mark for me. But at 4 months, I was now chronologically almost 46. I was biologically 29.
Wow.
So yeah.
That's how many year drop is that?
Well, 29 to 40. Well, it was almost 46, so 45 and 3/4, let's say. So,
and your previous biological biomarker that you had said
39, yeah.
So 10 years.
Yeah.
Whew.
Yeah. So, and that was not even really, I think truly, I probably should have been at the 5 month mark with patching before I
Mhm.
even checked it, but it was time, and so I did
Yeah.
it.
Okay,
Um,
before you go any farther, they're gonna ask because I talk about my biomarkers as well too.
yeah.
I didn't test before, so I have no idea where I
Oh, yeah.
was.
Yeah.
But I had them done at 6 months in, and then I had them done at 2 years in.
Yes.
So I was quite a bit. Yeah, I'm half my age right now. So where I am now, but they're going to ask, how do you do that? How do you test your biomarkers? And I know every practitioner or doctor may be a little bit different, whether it's bioresonance or blood. How did you do yours?
I use a bioresonance company. And so it is blood and saliva and hair strand testing.
Mm.
So, and we can try to drop that in if you want me to share that with
Yeah,
you.
please.
Um,
I would, if
yeah.
you, yeah, at some point in time, if I'm going like this talking, if you want to drop that information in or sometime towards the end, because I know they're going to want that information.
Yeah, yeah, and I think it's a good idea for all
Mhm.
of us because there again, it's kind of like weight is not truly an indicator of health, in my
Yep.
opinion. It, the same thing. Just because the chronological age is this, it doesn't necessarily mean biologically. And unfortunately, in the United States, it's more and more that these people are
Yeah.
46, but yet biologically they're 66.
Yeah.
So but that was a phenomenal, again, science girl. So I wanted to have some documented evidence there. As far as what I use patching, as my husband loves to say, I am all stickered up.
Mhm.
I truly do wear a combination of almost all of the patches. I do not use silent nights because I do not have issues sleeping.
Mhm.
I do not often use, well, I think I've used Icewave twice, maybe.
Mhm.
And one of those was preventative, which was great, by the way. But so, I'm just not a big patcher as far as those two go. Everything else is somewhere on my body at some point in the week. Cold and flu season, I wear glutathione every day because we see 100 plus patients a week.
Mhm.
X39, Eon, X49 go on my body every single day. I have always worn carnosine at least 5 days a week, and that's just because of the nerve issue.
Yeah.
So, but Alavita every single night, and that really for me has little to zero to do with skin. I did not start that patch because of skin. I think I have pretty decent skin.
Mhm.
Um, I started that patch because of the epithalamin response
Mhm.
and lining my organs. We have a very, very strong family history of colon cancer. And
Mm.
so if I can lead to or lend to a healthy colon lining, it's pretty darn hard to grow something that's not healthy. So that was my motivation for Alavita. It's also the second strongest patch. So very, very potent, great
Mhm.
for lots and lots of things. So, but that one I do wear every single night. So
Yeah, I'm identical. Never put silent nights on in my life and have used
yeah,
Ice Wave for preventative. That's
yep.
too funny. That's exactly me too. Same thing. Mix and match and putting on here and there. But I feel the same thing with you. So many people don't realize how powerful aloe vera is. They
Oh my
think,
God.
oh, it's for the skin, la la la. Why do you think it's so powerful? Because I feel the same way.
Well, anything, first of all, it is huge that it decalcifies the pineal gland. We often talk about the third eye or the pineal gland, and a lot of people realize that the pineal gland is responsible for, production of melatonin, helping us to absorb and utilize melatonin properly, but it's responsible for a lot of other bodily functions as well. And it works very, very much in synergy or in conjunction with that HPA axis that we talk about, the hypothalamus, the pituitary, the adrenals, and those really do control the entire body. Not to mention the epithalamin, that healthy inside skin tissue.
Mhm.
Now, I do think it's important that we keep good skin turgor and good strong skin on the outside. I do think it's great that we continue to produce melatonin. As we age, we just stop producing melatonin. And that's why elderly people that aren't in the best of health, they'll sleep all day long and stay awake all night.
Mhm.
Also, I think if we could correct the sleep problem in the United States, we would have far less health issues overall.
Yeah.
So
Agree.
I could probably talk to you for 2 hours on Alavita, but but for me, my motivation was I know, and I was a surgical nurse for a private surgeon for 7 years.
Mm.
And so when I tell you I've seen a lot of the insides of people, I've seen a lot of the insides. And if you have a normal, healthy colon, normal, healthy stomach tissue, gastric lining, uh, normal, healthy small intestine, which is where all the bad stuff tends to happen,
Mhm.
it's very, very difficult to be sick if you have a healthy gut, a healthy colon, a healthy small intestine.
So when
So,
you talk about gut health
yep.
and longevity, Alavita's in your recommendation.
Alavita is in my recommendation. It's
Mm,
obviously not the only one, but yeah, it plays a
yeah.
huge role. Yeah,
I
for
love
sure.
that. Thank you for sharing that. And I don't know that I've heard that about the lining of the colon as being something that I'm more familiar oxidative stress,
Yep.
inflammatory stress, like you said, that axis being able to, really impact the all of that, the
Yep.
female and male reproductive organs,
Yep.
organ benefits huge, but that's good to know about the lining of the colon. So
Yep.
many people, they get their colonoscopies and all this and da 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 da. But whew, I like that. All right, thank you for
I'm
sharing
far
that.
more on the prevention side. Let me
Yeah,
just do
me
something,
too.
just lay down some healthy tissue in there and let's call it good.
Yeah,
So yes.
I agree with that. I'm all about the prevention too. Lots of tools in the toolbox. Okay, so they want to know real quickly, where are you placing your patches? Because I'm a big proponent of on the body works, in the package doesn't. So, do you have set locations that you're applying the patches in your practice for
I
things?
I do.
Okay.
I really do. And I will say some of that goes back to that Eastern medicine, that principle of acupressure points, which
Mhm.
is, that is how David Schmidt designed these anyway,
Yeah.
is to follow acupressure points. However, sometimes getting the right placement and the right combination has just made an exponential difference in what we're seeing with our clients or our patients. So when possible, I think X39 really should be back here at C7.
Mm-hmm.
And that is one of the ones in the graphic or the diagram. I do think that's very important. If you think about where a lot of our cells are turned on, our gene expression is turned on, how our cells are produced and how they're proliferated through the body, that just makes sense to put it close to the brainstem.
Yeah.
So that one, unless there's a reason for me to put it somewhere else, that's kind of the rule of thumb there. And we don't use below the belly button too much because I'm using that for a lot of other things.
Mm-hmm.
So, and you can stack them, of course, too. We have found for chronic insomniacs, for example, put your Alavita patch on first here, then stack your Silent Nights on top of it. That seems to be the chef's kiss for my patients. So,
Wow.
I'm not opposed to stacking, but I do like to use as many or access as many acupressure points as I can.
Mhm.
Carnosine, if you have anything in the lower half of the body with nerves, let's say, tingling, spongy heel like I had,
Mhm.
right above the tailbone, center of the body, right above the tailbone. Always and forever, that's my go to spot.
Okay.
Um, Eon, we put Eon on the point of the problem. So I don't say the point of pain because for some people it's not pain that we're using it for.
Mm-hmm.
But if I'm going to have a weak spot in my body, it's going to be my low back. So most every day, my Eon goes on my low back. Also, I was trying to alleviate all that inflammatory response on those nerves in
Mm-hmm.
my lower back. So that's where my Eon goes. And we do make that very patient specific. And if you're just doing it preventatively and you don't really have any issues, then of course I would follow the graphics in the pamphlet. So glutathione, that's the master mover for me. I put it all over the place. So
Yeah.
it just depends on what we're doing. I will tell you, there's a really neat study that we're doing in office. 2 finger widths below the belly button for glutathione. If you have chronic back pain,
Mm-hmm.
that is a game changer. Now, it's really good to put it there for a lot of other things, but it makes a huge difference for chronic back pain.
That's
So,
interesting. Good tip.
yeah,
Good to
yeah.
know.
If somebody has a sore throat, I bracket them with glutathione, one over here, one over here. Sometimes I bracket an energy enhancer as well. It just depends. Sometimes we'll do glute here and then energy enhancers here.
Mm-hmm.
So it really does depend on what we're trying to target. Now my X49 goes below my belly button every single day because one of the clinical trials supported a huge reduction in belly weight, belly fat, and in waist circumference by wearing it, especially for women, below the belly button.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah.
Yeah, I remember David talking about that when it came out. Below the
Yep.
belly button or stomach 36 for women. Don't put it on the back of your neck. Men is
Right.
fine on the back of your neck. I
Right.
said, okay.
And that's, my husband has dropped 6 sizes. That's where he wears it every single day, is on the back of his neck. So he's sensory, so he doesn't want it anywhere he has hair or anything like that.
Yeah. Yeah. Both of
Um,
my husband will put on the back, but both my husband and my son. I have one husband, but my husband will put his on the back of his neck. Any other patch he puts on the sides, like on the hip muffin top
yeah,
area. My
on
son
his,
puts his 39 on one hip, 49 on the other hip. They're like,
yeah,
no hair there. We're going there.
yeah. Yeah, he's definitely done that as well. Energy enhancer is another, in my opinion, unsung hero. I did not put energy enhancer on my body for energy whatsoever. I really am a high energy person. And like I said, I do a lot of other things to make sure that I'm high energy.
Yeah.
So it had nothing to do with that. But I had a lymphatic injury in my early 20s. And so from that point forward, that's kind of like when a woman who has to have lymph nodes removed, they have the swelling of the arm, very similar to what I had experienced. So that's why I wear energy enhancer. Opening up those lymphatic channels. So anybody that has issues with swelling or anything like that, we use that a lot. Any of this virus that we experienced a few years ago, that we're still seeing some repercussions from in the body. I highly recommend at least one set of energy enhancers, and we usually do them right below the costal margins here, to open up those lung fields and help with breathing and stuff like that. Mine go on the balls of my feet every day, so and that does give you a little bump in energy for sure. Also, I love them because they burn 300 to 600 calories every time you put them on. So why not? But I really am, yeah, I'm wearing them on work days mostly. And that's because even though I sit on an anti-gravity ball chair, I'm still sitting all day long. So
Kind of keep that lymph moving.
yeah, I mean, our lymphatic system, it's one of my God questions. It has no pump, and it's so important, vitally important to our bodies and our health. I don't know why we didn't get a little built-in pump, but it's we operated. So
it needs its own measurable rhythm, right? Like our
right,
heart, our breath, our cranial fluid. Yeah.
yes. And I will say too, as far as the patients are concerned, a couple things for somebody who's been in traditional medicine. Number one, non-transdermal is huge, because of course we're familiar with transdermal. The skin is the largest organ, and so when we put something on the skin that's transdermal, we expect it to be actually absorbed into the skin, into the system that way. Non-transdermal means that it is activated in some other way, which in this case is photobiomodulation. Basically, the heat and the light from our body activates this patch with those specific, and of course, we don't know the exact formula, and we don't need to know the exact formula, but those amino acids and electrolytes and structured water and all of that in the center of those patches activates with our body heat, our body's light that we emit, and then that in turn activates peptides or turns things on in the body. And so for someone who sees, I mean, I very seldom see a patient that is not on at least one pharmaceutical when they start with me, if not 20 pharmaceuticals. So to be able to have, because even I've created a lot of supplements, but they don't always interact and play well with medications. And you have to be very, very careful, and you have to be hyper vigilant about how you do that. Well, this I can put on everybody because it's not going to interfere with medication. It's not going to interfere with anything. And your body innately knows what to do. We are designed to heal. So it's turning on what needs to be turned on. It's not turning on what doesn't need to be turned on. So it's just been a game changer in that regard, to be able to, activate the right cells and have the right gene expression without me having to be concerned about the medication side or even the condition side, what these people are experiencing and why we might not be able to use supplements, and that kind of thing. So that's been a huge game changer. The other big thing for those of us in the Western world, peer-reviewed studies are hard to come by. This technology actually has some peer-reviewed studies, and it has tons of multiples of published studies. You do not receive a published study unless your product does what it says it's going to do. And that's whether we're talking about a pharmaceutical, or whether we're talking about a supplement, or whether we're talking about a wellness technology like this. You cannot receive a published study unless your product is going to do what it says it's going to do. So those were things that were huge green flags for me to start. And I just started gangbusters, with this, particularly with our patients that we would say, you don't have much to lose. We're dealing with conditions that are rapidly progressing. We need to get this under control and do it quickly. And it's just unreal, the results we've seen.
Well, and the fact that the technology is patented as
Oh,
well.
yeah,
You know, you have patents.
yes.
You know the time, energy, and effort and what has to happen in order for that
Yep.
to be achieved. And we know David Schmidt's the inventor of this technology, and he holds over 150 of them himself personally. And this X39, well, all of our patches are patented, but the X39 has a 20-year patent. And we're in year 4 of that 20-year patent. So knowing that when you have a patent, it says the patch does this
Yes.
in the body, in the blood, and it
Yep.
does this, and that's like you cannot dispute what the patent says, correct?
That's absolutely right. It is the most, I take it from me, I know from personal experience, that's the most grueling experience you can go through, is to receive a patent. So yeah, there's no question. And I was, like I said, sold on day one, because it's not a matter of if it does it, it absolutely does it. Now, the time frame in which it does it and what it is, cells in our body, specific cells actually are what we call pluripotent. So monopotent, of course, when we're in utero and we're developing a head and we're developing fingers and toes and arms and legs and all of that, that's monopotency. Pluripotent, then that means those healthy cells are going to go where they need to go and do what they need to do. And that is the priority in which the body knows that needs to be done. So we might be patching a patient. We do, even now, we've had to open up with my assistant, who is also credentialed in alternative therapies. She does patch consults because we have people just wandering in from other, thankfully, doctors' offices and things are referring. So, she'll sit down with them and I want my low back pain to go away. Okay, well, here's what we would recommend. Pretty much everybody across the board leaves with X39 and Eon because everybody needs those two. But I always preface it by saying, while we want your back pain to go away, and I absolutely think we can get there, you can live, albeit uncomfortable. You can live with back pain. You could have an issue with your liver that none of us know about. You could have an issue with your kidney that none of us know about. You can't live without a liver. You could have an issue with the brain. I mean, there's so many things that are unknowns, and I don't care if you've had every scan known to man on Monday, and this is Tuesday. Only God knows exactly what's going on in the body at any point in time. And our medicine has only gotten to a certain point as far as diagnostics go. So those cells, though, they go exactly where they need to go. That is the most important area, and that's going to be addressed first. And I just think that's a phenomenal technology.
Yeah, smart technology. Working with the body's own ability to do what it was designed to do, which was to keep us in balance, to keep us in homeostasis. And just like so many things that you mentioned, the body is out, people's bodies are out of balance, whether it was from, the stuff going around over the last 4 years or the stuff that was being put into the body in that process, whatever it is, things compound. And I love last week, Dr. Jennifer said, we have 2 things. We have toxicity and we have deficiency. And where people don't realize they're bombarded with toxins, and they really don't realize, a lot of people don't, how nutrient deficient their foods are. And so we're seeing people that are going, I need something. Give me anything. Give me everything you have. And I love that you said X39 and Eon, because we're going to do some questions. I want to hear about your patients in your office, of course. But we're going to do some Q&A, and X39 and Eon is always a starting point. Can you tell them why really quickly before you share with me some of your clients' experiences?
Sure. So it is my perspective, X39, of course, activates the GHK copper peptide. That in turn activates healthy gene expression, healthy cell generation, and regeneration. At 35, we're only using about half of some of our healthy cells, and utilizing them by 60, it's more like 10% to 0%. So anytime that we can turn that back on, and I use the example of the 5-year-old child that breaks their femur. The femur is the largest bone in the body. It's the bloodiest bone in the body. If
Mm.
that 5-year-old breaks their femur, a lot of times, standard of care now in the United States, we don't even cast that anymore. We just splint it, because by the time we cast them, those healthy cells are already rushing to that area. They're remineralizing that bone. They're knitting it back together. And by 6, that kid has no clue they broke their largest bone in their body. I am chronologically 46. If I break my femur, the largest, bloodiest bone in my body, without patching, number one, I'm very much likely going to know that I've broken that bone for the rest of my life. In addition to that, I'm going to end up with a titanium rod. I'm going to end up with a lot of physical therapy. And it being the largest, bloodiest bone in the body, about 85% of the time, I think the most recent study showed, you end up with at least a micro brain bleed because it's the bloodiest bone in the body.
What?
So, yes.
I have
So,
not heard that. How do you
yeah.
end up with a brain bleed from a broken bone in your leg?
Well, it is the bloodiest
Just from
bone
the blood? Just
in
from
the
the blood?
body. And of course, all of our red blood cell production, think about what bone marrow
Oh,
actually
yeah.
is. So there's a direct correlation there. Yeah.
Wow.
So I won't get real sciencey, but there is a direct correlation.
Tell me that later then. I need to see
Yeah.
that study.
Yeah. So my point being, with these X39 patches, with long enough wear, use, that kind of thing, my body is going to have much more similar response to that 5-year-old, because my genes are still on, my cells are still working for me, and they're still very much awake and alive and remineralizing and knitting back together and that kind of thing. So X39 is very important because we need that healthy cellular response. Eon, however, is, in my opinion, equally important, if not even a little more important, because it activates that master anti-inflammatory effect in the body. Not to mention, anecdotally, which was found in the clinical trials, it's the happy patch. It also balances the hormones, balances the endocrine system. Well, we're all a little stressed. We're all in fight or flight a little more than we should be. And then most of us have some other conditions somewhere along the way that relate back to the endocrine system, or inflammation, or both. I always tell my patients, nothing good happens in an inflamed body, period. But also, the favorite meal of inflammation is a healthy cell. So if we're turning on healthy cell production and healthy gene expression, and we're not managing the inflammation, then we're not going to have the same outcome. It's not to say that you won't eventually get there, but it is a much, much more powerful response if you're using those two together.
That is fantastic. Thank you for sharing that. So let's hear about some of your client experiences.
So I'll touch on the Alavita. I have a gentleman, he was in his 40s, diagnosed with some atypical rogue cells in the colon. He also had some other health conditions. And so he made the decision that, and really, he wasn't a great candidate for traditional therapy. And so we had been working together probably a year, maybe longer than that. And he had been coming in for the modalities and doing lots of things. So I want to make sure that everybody understands we were making progress, but enter the patches. And so I have requested, because that is a case where he elected for no surgery. So we needed diagnostics every 3 to 6 months so that I could kind of measure our progress. And so everything had been sort of iffy. I mean, it wasn't shrinking, it wasn't growing, but it was just there. That's not what any practitioner, whether we're talking traditional or otherwise, wants to see. We need to see the needle move one way or another so we know kind of what to do. We prefer that it move in the way of, oh, this is going away. So we started patching his next 3-month increment. We saw significant change. And by now, we've now had 2 sets of imaging, and that particular area that was of concern, even the toughest of the radiologists who never want to commit one way or another, everybody's having to say, and the oncologists who we just have to agree to disagree a whole lot of the time, everybody's agreed, we're done. We don't have to worry about that. So that, to be so young, now he's got some other health conditions we're working on, full disclosure, but to be so young and to use no traditional means, and to see that kind of result. And the only thing really that changed was the fact that we were able to start using patches. And before everybody asks, I will tell you, X39, Eon, Alavita, remember I said colon, Alavita, those were our 3 big ones. And then of course we have added glutathione, when at times I'll say we do occasionally do energy enhancers. We did energy enhancers when we were really trying to slow the process,
Mm-hmm.
just to keep that lymphatic system open and healthy. But the major players in that were X39, Eon, and the Alavita.
Okay.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
So have another one who very similar atypical rogue cells, very complex case. This is a young lady who has been fighting this particular issue for about, I don't know, 4-6 years, and was in remission, now is not in remission, and that's how she got to me. And so again, she is a nurse. She has lots of knowledge about alternative therapies and things like that, had already instituted a lot of things. We tweaked her supplements. And, I do want to say, I'm not suggesting that these patches necessarily take the place of everything, but I mean, I still take supplements some. I
Yeah.
take a whole lot less now, I can tell you that. Which my husband laughs and says, we've spent thousands of dollars in 6 years with you developing these supplements. And now you're telling people to put a patch on. But it's true, because we just don't need as much anymore. So we tweaked some of that for her, and she just wasn't making progress. In fact, some of those numbers that we watch were creeping up. And that was despite our best efforts. And I said, and I had mentioned the patches to her, and she said, I'm a nurse brain, so let's do one thing at a time. So we got around to, okay, now your numbers are creeping up. She said, okay, I'm good with the patching. She, like me, read the clinical trials and the data. And she just was in this week. Her markers are remarkably improved. And this is I wish I could tell you all of her story, but I'm not talking about a simple little patch of cells that we need to worry about. This is a very, could be a very, very serious situation, but it's remarkable. We've got a patient that needed to have a knee replaced, and now they don't. We have too many stories for me to tell you about chronic pain issues. And the list goes on and on and on. One of my favorites, I don't know what it is about these nurses, but she, read the studies as well. She totally bought into it. She was ready to go. And I've never seen a response with a blood pressure like she had, but two blood pressure agents for 45 years, and in 3 weeks was totally off of them. Totally off of them. So and for that one, Eon, X39, carnosine. That's what we did there. So and then I have my assistant who takes notes for me, and just we can't live without her. She so I had briefed my staff about the patches, and I had explained the technology to them, but we were waiting for them to come in. We did I kind of chose the route of, I'm going to buy patches for myself, I'm going to buy patches for my staff, and then I'm going to do the retail package so that we can have some available in the office. And so we were waiting on those to come in. I was in with a patient. I had no idea what they were doing. This is my assistant who had chronic back pain, debilitating back pain. They were selling their home because she no longer could go up and down the stairs appropriately. Well, if I had patched her, I would have put Eon on the point of pain. Well, they didn't know, because they knew very little about the patches anyway. So they just stuck an X39 right on her mid-low back, and her knee had started to bother her because of her gait change and all of that. Within 8 minutes, her knee pain was gone. And within 30 minutes, her back pain was gone and stayed gone.
Wow.
So she truly is that one patch wonder.
Wow.
So yeah, I don't have to say much about the patches in my office. We've had so many staff related positives that they kind of take care of it. By the time the patient gets to me, they're like, tell me about these patches. Yeah, and I could go on and on all night. And again, I don't want to say that this is the only thing we use, but it is the only thing we've changed. So, to see these rapid results and these, it's just, it's quite refreshing. And it's something that we will utilize always.
I love that. We're very much the same, as in we have a lot of tools in our toolbox, and we utilize those tools as needed to help people.
Right.
And some tools work better than others for some people, right? We know that some people respond differently, but this bypasses all of that, I find.
Yeah.
whether it's a one patch wonder or whether it takes, 4 to 6 months or longer.
Right.
This will address all of those things without having to absorb anything, digest or assimilate or worry about, is this actually doing what I think it's going to be doing? Because it's happening literally at the speed of light inside of your body.
Yes. Yes.
And
Absolutely right.
there's no thought. Like I have a lady in the UK and she's big animal, right? Big, big, big with her animals on her property. And she said, a dog can't make this up. A horse can't make this up. These
Right.
cats can't make this up. When they injure themselves and I patch them, and this is again her speaking, right?
Yeah.
They're fine.
Yeah.
And
Absolutely.
sometimes you think, oh, this is a placebo. And then I've had people say, oh, this is a placebo, sign me up for it, because this is
Well,
the
we
best
say that about,
non-invasive, affordable placebo I've ever seen. And we know it's obviously not from the studies,
yeah.
but it's like still, wow, it's just
Yeah.
working like that. No matter what, it's always working.
Right. And we
Always.
say that about everything in our office. Hey, so what if it is placebo? You certainly look, feel, and act a whole lot better. So
Yeah.
yeah.
You
Don't
look,
put
feel, and
patches
act.
on. Don't put patches on young cats, though. Of course, I did a science experiment with them as well with our used patches. Oh my gosh, we didn't sleep all night because they
Yeah.
were crazy wild.
Yeah. I have
So
a 2-year-old and a 5-year-old dog, and we don't
yeah,
patch them.
no.
No.
If they're older, chronic pain issues, absolutely. We've got lots of stories from those from our patients telling us about that.
Yeah.
But I patched them just to see what would happen. No, I won't do that again.
I don't blame you. Cats can be crazy anyways, right?
Oh, right.
I love them. I love them. Okay, so we have some questions. Are you okay for some questions for the next
Sure.
10 minutes? Okay. So we're going to kind of go through as many as we can fast. So just kind of, spit out whatever you would recommend. So somebody has anger, they're craving things like sugary things, right? And they've got some, ringing in their ears. What would you recommend?
X39 Eon SP6.
Fantastic. And
Yep.
some of these I'm going to skip past because you've addressed many different things in here. What about somebody that has a chronic, the crushed pelvis at age 15 and now they're 40 and they've got, chronic issues and kind of lumps and bumps coming out of the pelvic area and stuff?
So Eon X39 X49 would be very important there, and possibly energy enhancer, depending on what lumps and bumps we're talking about.
Yeah, if it's the lymphatic system, the lymph nodes or whatever. What about somebody that needs to gain weight? I know your husband dropped 6 pant sizes, but what if you need to gain weight?
I've had a few of those in my practice. What I've started them with is X39 and Eon. I find that most of the time that takes care of it. Interestingly, SP6, again, it's an intelligent patch. It's going to do what needs to be done in the body the way in which it needs to be done. So I have added that for a couple people and we've had success as well. So it's not just for weight loss. That patch is kind of an unsung hero and everybody sort of touts it as weight loss. I've seldom to never use that for weight loss.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, fantastic. What about kidney issues? Just anything to do with the kidney.
So X39 and Eon, that's kind of standard. And then carnosine is very
Okay.
important for the kidney. Yeah.
Okay. Fantastic. All right. And what about let's just say your heart's not quite functioning right and those numbers are elevated. What would
Yeah.
we recommend for anything to do with that pumper?
So X39, Eon, carnosine, and depending on what kind of pumping issue we were having, X49 would be another alternative. Carnosine and X39, it's very interesting, the studies on regeneration of the cardiovascular system and restoring it to 8 weeks younger with 6 weeks of use. So anything to do, I say anything to do with blood flow issues. So, your heart pumps blood, your brain, you got to have some good perfusion of blood through there. Also, carnosine is potent in helping to bind with aluminum, which is a huge problem in the brain as well. But those would be my absolutes would be X39, Eon, and carnosine. And then if they could, and depending on what the issue might be, I would add X49.
Okay, fantastic. Thank you. So let's say specific issues with the brain. You've had, things have went north in that department. You know what I mean? So anything neurological, anything at all, brain.
X39, Eon, X49, and then in that case, carnosine sometimes, depending on what those issues might be. But depending on where they were in that condition or that issue. but definitely 39, 49, and Eon for sure.
Okay, fantastic. And you've addressed like the nerve kind of pain, nerve pain, fingers, inflammation, things like that. Um,
Yep.
what if it goes a little bit more where it's like up in the wrist and we get up in that area with the kind of pain and inflammation or joints, that kind of stuff.
So obviously Ice Wave if you need it for pain control for sure. X39 Eon, um, Carnosine I would probably advocate for as well with that.
Mm.
Um, and yeah, that's probably where I would start with that.
Okay, fantastic. Well, that
We have
sounds.
a really, I mean, if we're talking about, people that type a lot or they, stylists, hairstylists are the ones that I constantly see with this. You can be really intentional about how you patch your Eon and
Mm-hmm.
your carnosine on the wrists, and that makes a huge improvement. And really, it would apply to anything to do with with the nerves and inflammation in that area.
Mm-hmm. I love that. Okay, so when you have patients that have had maybe say blood work for let's just say, that protein that gets kind of out of whack from the stuff we dealt with years ago,
Yep.
have you found that any patches have helped with that specific protein that's gone rampant in our body?
So glutathione for sure. I haven't talked about that one a lot tonight,
Yeah.
but I could talk about that one for
Yeah.
hours. That one for sure. Eon and X39 for sure, and I would absolutely do X49. Just because of the correlation there with some of the other great benefits that X49 creates a
Mhm.
protection for our bodies against. But
Mhm.
yeah, those are the standards, and then energy enhancers, of course, too, depending on exactly what we might be dealing with from that protein.
Mhm. Okay, so what about if someone has like screws in their body, or you mentioned a titanium rod earlier, or
Yep.
a hip or knee replacement, or like a pacemaker, something like that that's in their body that they were not born with.
Mhm.
How do you feel about that? What do you suggest?
Oh, well, I patch everybody, so that wouldn't bother me at all.
Okay.
Um, and it would really, I mean, if everything's functioning well, then I would say we would just stick with the Eon X39 for sure. If
Hmm.
they felt that there were some conditions coming from or arising from some of those implantable devices or, that kind of stuff, then it would sort of depend on what the problem was. I think anyone with an implantable device as it pertains to, then I would probably say it would be a no brainer to be on carnosine in addition to that, just because you
Hmm.
want to keep that muscle as healthy as you possibly can. So,
Yeah. Yeah.
um, because there's obviously been some electrical issues there already. So,
Hmm. Yeah,
um,
definitely. Okay, what about if someone's had like a tear of like the tensor fascia in the hip, the tensor fascia lata in the hip? So think more along the lines of, you know, muscle tear,
yep,
tendon, ligament,
yep.
that kind of thing. It's not the same as a bone, obviously.
Right. I do recommend the same for kind of everything that has to do with tendons, cartilage, muscle, that kind of stuff. X39, Eon, carnosine, and glutathione.
Mm.
And if it were in the hip area, then I would place those kind of in a specific way. It is my rule of thumb. I typically, the glutathione, unless we're bracketing or something like that, that tends to stay on the right side of the body. The liver's on the right side of the body. Glutathione would be on the right side. Carnosine, if we're going to pick a side, it's either going to be center of the body or the hip or whatever we're talking about, or to the left. And
Mm-hmm.
then I like Eon kind of in a little house top, not like a triangle without a bottom.
Mm-hmm.
So I would put Eon kind of right in the middle, top section, pretty much across the board, no matter what we're dealing with. And
Okay.
then X39, it's sort of up to them. Most people still stick with the same point here, but you certainly can put it locally as well. When my son did what he did with his ankle,
Mm-hmm.
I had X39s on both sides of the ankle. I had Eons on both sides of the ankle. So, and that's an injury that should have kept him out for a while. And in a day and a half, he was brand new. Now he was also 17, so keep that in mind. But yeah,
My son had the same thing, ankle injury at age 17. I did the same thing, multiple patch, and he was literally off crutches and good to go the
yeah,
next day.
that was his response too.
Wow.
So yeah. And
Boom.
sometimes I think too, our brain stems tell our body. That's just the truth of it. So I think sometimes if we visually see ourselves putting a patch where we have the problem, you and I both know, we've read the clinical trials. We know those patches are going to work. It really
Mhm.
doesn't matter where you put them on the body. I do think stimulating acupressure points, that is important. But I do think if we have an injury and we see these patches, they're here, I think it helps our brainstem and our body. It might speed it up a little.
Yeah, I agree. I said that all the time to people. It's mental, right? We
Yeah,
are
yeah,
trained and programmed to put something on the body where the issue is.
that's
And
right.
so if you feel like you need to do that, do that. There's
Yeah,
nothing wrong with it. It doesn't,
right.
but on the same token, we've heard countless testimonials of people that do nothing but the back of the neck and all these other things get
Yeah,
fixed and they've
yeah,
never patched them.
yeah. Just put it on.
Just get it on the body. But I know that everyone is going to, they're like in the chat, there are literally probably thousands of comments. I can't keep up with all of them, but I know they're going to be like, okay, let me go back and listen to it again. Cause where did she say for this? Where did she say for that? What was this? Because, everybody wants the tips, right? They want the suggestions. So thank you for being so open and sharing those. But I
Absolutely.
need you to discuss water, hydration,
Yes.
because that is key. Why is that key?
Well, for a few reasons, anytime we're turning on anything in the body, positive or negative, we do have to be well hydrated. And 85% of Americans are chronically dehydrated. It's just the truth. Other countries fall a little bit less than that, but as a world in general, we are chronically a little dehydrated. Also, just because we are drinking water, and our rule of thumb has always been half of your body weight in ounces. That is still my rule of thumb. If we're adding a glutathione patch, sometimes I up that a little bit. But I think the other key that we miss, especially in the United States, because there's so much bad information out there, we don't remineralize properly. So while you do need to drink your water, you also need to be taking in some form of healthy electrolytes so that we are detoxing, we are purging from the body appropriately. We have the right amount of fluid on board that we can actually do that. But also, cellular response is directly related to how hydrated you are. We want water pulled into the cells. I do things a little differently than some practitioners, and some of that goes back to the Western Eastern thing. We put a pinch of pink Himalayan salt in all of the water that we drink. If you don't want to change the flavor profile, a pinch is perfect. We also put a pinch of Celtic salt on our tongue or under our tongue at least once a day. That, for most of the people, that takes care of it. You want to squeeze a little fresh lemon in there or a little lime in there, that's
Mhm.
really going to bump it up. My kids are 18 and 23. Yep. Mine's right here. I have it pre-mixed. um, my kids are 18 and 23. They haven't ever done Gatorade and all of
Yeah.
those types of things. We do, and I have a marathon runner, one of them, and then the performance travel ball player. We drink pink salt, water, lemon juice. If you want to add a little honey to get a little natural sugar, you certainly can do that. A little apple cider vinegar, whatever. But
Mhm.
it doesn't have to be complicated. I do think that all the patch community, we should be putting some electrolytes in though. And you certainly can get some clean stick forms and all that. I just have, it's worked for years. So I've stuck with pink salt, and I like pink salt. We don't have time to go into all that, but I like it in the water. I like Celtic under the tongue.
Yeah.
And that's just because they have a little bit different mineral profile. So,
Yeah, they do. And we can't wait for David's day and
yes,
nighttime formula to come out.
I know. Yes, exactly. So,
And we don't have time to get into that either,
yeah, yeah.
unfortunately.
But yeah, hydration is absolutely key. Anytime we've had a couple of issues of what we call retracing, where somebody might have a little experience that might not be positive right away. But 99% of the time, if they're having I don't feel well, I've got, something going on, it's just they're not hydrated. We drink some good mineralized water and they're good to go.
Yeah, totally agree. Well, Jill, thank you so much for spending this hour with us this evening and everything you poured into everyone. You are a wealth of knowledge. And I know we had almost 600 people on here tonight. You're like, yes.
Well, it's my privilege and honor. I could talk about Lifewave, and I think I do talk about Lifewave in my sleep.
I had my first dream last night with David Schmidt in it. I was like, oh my gosh, David Schmidt's on stage. And I've
Well, I've
never,
dreamed about
you
the
know,
patches. I don't think I've dreamed about him, but I have dreamed about the patches. So
well, I have tons of dreams all the time, but I've never had one with him in it. And last night I was like, okay, David's on, and he was a little bit older, and I'm like, all right, he was calling me up to speak, and I was like, yay. So funny. The patches definitely make you sleep crazy deep and dream very vivid dreams,
yes, yes.
realistic dreams. But thank you so much, Jill, for taking the time tonight. I'm just so grateful for you, and I will have this recording up, and I'll send it to you as well too, so you can share it with all of your audience as well. So thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you.
Thank you. Have a great night.